Hi, I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to Finextra TV. I'm speaking in the lead up to Singapore Fintech Festival with Camilla Bullock, CEO of Emerging Payments Association Asia. And we're talking about payments, interoperability and regulation. Camilla, great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Really good to have you on. Like I say, we're speaking in the lead up to Singapore Fintech Festival, where I know you'll have a busy event speaking on a panel around the intricacies of payments interoperability from cross-border perspectives. So a really interesting topic that I'd like to go into a bit more detail. Before I do, it'd be great if you could bring us up to date and tell us where we're up to with the digital economy and how is interoperability defined? Let's start there.
Yeah. So let's start with the digital economy, and I think it's something that all the participants watching this today are very well aware of. And I mean, it's started with that increased digitalization through COVID, and then that just hit that hockey stick moment that just has continued. And I think we see data that if we look at the digital economy and how that has impacted how we do business, and with that also digital trade. So digital trade is now something around 15% of the global GDP. And why I take us into that around digital trade, because that's really where payments play such a big role, the digital trade and the digital payments that enables that. And it's also a very important topic, because I don't think you can find anybody in the financial system or any economist that doesn't like talking about trade. It's really the way to prosperity for any countries, but there is no trade without payments. And so hence that interoperability is so important, because when we don't have it, it drives up cost, it drives up time and difficulty, and specifically for SMEs and micro enterprises, and those smaller and not up until now so included in trade, but digital trade really enables them to reach new markets and new customer groups.
Wonderful. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and that what interoperability is. I guess that's what I'm going to talk to my panelists about, but normally it's very defined out of technical perspective, and if you would look it up in any dictionary, we talk about different systems or different appliances that can interact with together in a smooth and seamless way. And it also talks about that the ease for a user to navigate between different systems.
Well, thank you very much for bringing us up to date and clarifying that for us. And when we talk about interoperability, we talk about it from a technical point of view, but also then there's a slightly different regulatory perspective as well, isn't there? So do you find that there's a challenge combining the two?
I think in both aspects, when we talk about interoperability, people have to agree around standards and what things are, and we often talk about rules. And so it is that to agree about what something is. And when we talk about interoperability, we often say the ultimate global interoperability or in payment system, that they are accessible, affordable, reliable, and safe. But when we say that, we also have to agree what those different words means. And I think affordable and reliable are maybe not as hard as defined as accessible and safe, because then we start to talk about risk, and risk is defined in different ways in different markets. And one thing that often is a bottleneck when it comes to payments and interoperability is that around privacy. And privacy has with data to do. And as we defined before, like there is no trade without payments, and there is no payments without the movement of data. So a long way to say it, but it's often is that the data element, and that comes back both to regulatory interoperability and the technical one, because it is the data that needs to move in both aspects, if that makes sense.
It does indeed. Well, thank you very much for that. And I know the panel will be covering a lot, and one of the areas it will be talking about is the principles necessary to achieve interoperability. So it'd be great to get your thoughts on that, and also from the perspective of emerging payments Association Asia as well. What's been your experience there?
So we will talk about this around the technical and the regulatory that I always already have covered, and then also of user interoperability. What does that mean? It comes down to access for different groups. And then I don't just mean different markets, but I mean different demographics or socioeconomic groups or age groups. But I think in all this, what we actually come down to is a lot around that word that we use over and over in our panels, in our discussion, trust. And trust is with the risk. And then one thing again that is hard to define, and that is this thing we're sort of walking around and all many different discussion around payments is liability. So when we start to talk about the risk and we agree that there is a risk, who is then liable if this risk emerges? Because what we want to achieve is this interoperable network. But the network is never safer than the weakest link. So how do we define that risk and the liability that comes with it? So different principle, and as I started off talking about different definitions of what does the different words means. But I think, and I do believe that we'll come to this. I often speak about when I first came to Australia, which was a long time ago, and needed to do phone calls home. It was very, very complicated. It was very, very expensive. And now it's so smooth. We're here today via mobile phone and via internet connection. So I think payments will get to that. It's just a few discussions away.
Sure. Well, watch this space. I'm sure you'll be covering those in your panel session as well. But Camilla, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's a really interesting topic that will unravel at Singapore Fintech Festival, I'm sure. And look forward to catching up with you further down the line. But thank you very much.
Thank you.